Welcome everybody. My name is Jeff Fowler. I'm the president of the Apartment Owners Association, and today our topic is how to turn a 1031 exchange into a DST. And I'm very excited about our speaker because he's so overqualified to talk on the subject, and just what they're doing is incredible. And anyway, so excited about that. But I do want to mention that there is closed caption for those of you that would like to see the captions, but it's on Facebook. So go to the AOA Facebook page and you could get the closed captions that way. And then also, some of you may have been at the event yesterday in Pasadena and with Dennis Block. That was great. Again, today at noon, we're going to have another legislative update with Dennis Block. It's going to be live on YouTube, live stream, Facebook, AOAUSA.com. So you'll be able to catch that there. And if you own property in LA County, including LA City, you really need to tune into that one specifically, because just things that have been happening in the last little bit here. And I'm just going to choose to be joyful and thankful, even though not thankful for our politicians very much, but thankful for the things that are going good. But man, it's been a rough road here the last week or so with what the crazy politicians have been doing. And then also, we have a legislative update in Oakland on February 22nd, and then also another in-person one in Santa Clara on February 23rd. And what we're doing now is trying to have an online event for our different areas. And so we'll have one in San Diego on February 23rd, and it will be kind of like the legal Q&A article that we run every month in the magazine, and that's specific to your area. And so we'll be doing that on a live stream as well. So we'll have an attorney give a legislative update, just depending on which area you're in, and then answer some questions that we gather just through the month, questions that you guys are asking us a lot, and we figure other people would also benefit from it. So those are things that continue to come up. So you could subscribe to this YouTube channel that we have, or just even having your just signing up for our email list. Even if you're not a member, you can sign up for that list and get just kind of stay in the know with some of the things that are going on in your area, as well as the events that we have. And of course, the whole point, our goal is to help you to become the most successful rental property owners here in the state. That's our goal. And we just want to keep you in the know, give you the tools that you need. And one of those things is a property management software. AOA actually acquired a property management software company and a couple years back, and we've been retooling that and to make it work well for our members. And just recently, we were able to make what we just heard is starting next month, we're going to have the online rental payments. It's already been there, but it's going to be just one day instead of 5 before it funds in your account. And so we're excited about that. And so that software continues to just be such a time saver for people, from the bookkeeping to the online rental payments to the rental applications. So check that out if you haven't. And when you're an AOA member, you get that. The first 6 months of that are free. And then for anybody, if you're not a member yet, definitely become a member. You get 100% money back guarantee. So just join and give it a shot. And then also for this event, we will take questions at the end. So hold your questions, because our speaker is going to deliver a lot of information. Hold your questions till the end, and then you put that in the chat. And also, if you're on AOAUSA.com, there's a blue help button, and you can put your question in there, and they'll relay that on to me as well. And just want to say thank you to Inland Securities Corporation. This is a massive company. They've been in business for over 50 years. They've done $10 billion worth of Delaware statutory trusts over the last 15 years. So that's just an astounding number. And they've been the largest sponsor of DST in the country every single year. And they still are this year. And I think part of it, they would attribute it to their customer first culture. And so today our speaker is from Inland. He's the Western Divisional Director. He's a Senior VP, so he's got a couple different hats that he's wearing. He has just a tremendous background. Maybe he'll get into that, maybe not, but it's my pleasure to introduce you today, Charles Jensen.
Just want to welcome everyone here today. My name is Charles Jensen. I'm the Senior Vice President with Inland Securities Corporation, also the Western Director. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the webinar today. My information is here in a barcode. You can scan this kind of like a restaurant menu and get all my information. This is a great way to download some of the brochures and information that we have on Delaware Statutory Trust. And again, it's great to be here with you today with the Apartment Owners Association. To start off, our presentation is called Utilizing DSTs in a 1031 Exchange. And our goal here today is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who Inland is, talk about the Delaware Statutory Trust and how exchanges work, some of the basics, so you can all have that information. And just so you know, too, since we're talking about Delaware Statutory Trust, there are certain risks that are inherent in these. Past performance is not indicative of future results. So I urge you all to read your private placement memorandum that come with these types of investments. They're a couple hundred pages long, but it's definitely a good weekend read. So who is Inland? Inland was started by 4 Chicago teachers back in the 60s. These teachers started teaching school after college and banded together at the same school in South Chicago. Their idea was to buy some real estate to supplement their income. To be exact, they're making about $6,000 a year teaching school. So not a lot of money even back then in the 60s. So they started teaching school, and the only phone they had access to do their transactions or find real estate was the faculty lounge phone in the teacher's lounge. So you can imagine back in the 60s, a couple corded phones, couches strewn together. These people were making phone calls. They found their very first transaction was a piece of land in between 2 buildings in Chicago. It was a $4,000 piece of land. So what they did was they bought this land, they got a construction loan, and developed a 4-unit apartment building. Shortly thereafter, they sold this apartment building and they doubled their initial investment. You can imagine what was going on around them. All the teachers were saying, hey, can we invest with you on your next deal? And they said, sure. They did another deal and another and another. Within 5 years of their very first transaction, they went full-time into real estate in 1967. They incorporated in Oak Brook, Illinois in 1968. And Oak Brook's the same town that McDonald's got their start as well. So you can imagine they're managing their friends' and family's money, going full-time into real estate. They kept buying land, retail, industrial, medical, storage, hotels, student housing, you name it. The great part of the story is those 4 former teachers came from low to middle income families. They became the largest landlord of Walmart nationwide in 1989. So kind of a rags to riches story. Some of them became billionaires. Today, we have about 1,500 employees in a 5-building campus in Oak Brook, Illinois. We're vertically integrated. We've done real estate investment trusts, opportunity zones. We're most known for 1031 exchanges. A lot of you have been researching Delaware Statutory Trust out there. We are the #1 sponsors of DST in the nation. 1031 exchange DSTs since 2004. We're the nation's leader. The great part of the story here I'm trying to tell you is that the 4 founders that started Inland are still at the company today. One is the head of sales, one's the chief legal counsel, another one's head of acquisition and chairman and CEO. So a very vertically integrated company with a lot of experience going on 55 years in business. We have investments in 45 states in almost every sector of real estate, amassing over $10 billion in assets under management in the 1031 exchange side. So we're the behemoth in the exchange world. So let's start with this. Why would you want to do a 1031 exchange? And I think this is elementary for a lot of you, but I want to go over just for 2 minutes the basic rules of 1031 exchange, just so we're on the same page. So when you do a 1031 exchange, the reason people are doing it, they've been doing it since the 1920s, is to defer their taxes on real estate, right? On investment real estate. So what you do is buy a property, it grows in value, you sell it, and you roll the whole amount into the next property, into the next. It's been going on over 100 years. And the reason you do it is you can swap till you drop, defer till you die, and upon death is a step up in basis to fair market value. So the taxes can go away under current tax law. So here's how it looks. Assuming $1 million, you're going to run into four major taxes. The first tax is called depreciation recapture, or it's like they call it the hidden tax. So what happens here is assume there's $100,000 in depreciation or tax benefits along the way. The IRS will claw back up to 25% of those funds, or $25,000 on the $100,000. The biggest tax is the federal tax on the gain, which is 20%, or $200,000 on the million. The next biggest tax is the state level. Now, I kind of joke around here. It says 5.1% in state taxes. Now, this is a national presentation, and a lot of you here are in California today. And we know that it's not 5.1% in California. We're closer to 13.3. So forget $51,000. You're looking closer to $133,000 potentially on the state level. The Medicare tax, the Obamacare Medicare, also is the 3.8% tax is applicable here, or $38,000. So on a national level, you're looking at $686,000 left out of every million. In California, it could be closer to $600,000 or potentially up to a 40% hit. So the reason people do 1031 exchanges is to defer all their taxes, have that full million working for you. I always say it's like the 401k of real estate. Why would you cash in your 401k, pay all the taxes? Why not have the full million working for you in the future? So this little cartoon here, it says the IRS, put the words together, it spells theirs. Our goal today is to teach you about the 1031s and the DST option to keep the money in your pocket, to give less to the IRS, right? As a general rule of thumb, when you sell your property, the funds have to go to a third-party qualified intermediary. There's a lot of great qualified intermediaries out there. Give us a call. We can help you connect with one of them in California. And this is a necessary thing. I did a seminar recently that someone had a $3 million exchange, and they did not put the money with the QI. It ended up in their checking account, and it caused a taxable event. So this is not no ifs, ands, or buts. The money has to go to a third-party qualified intermediary. What makes it qualified is it's not your buddy down the street, your realtor, your financial advisor. It's someone impartial to you. So as soon as those funds hit the qualified intermediary, it starts day one of a federal clock. You've got 45 days in which to identify up to 3 properties. Now, you can go beyond 3 properties by using what's called the 200% rule. You sell a million in real estate, you can go into $2 million in real estate. So you could sell that $1 million property and go to $20,000, $100,000 condos in Indiana, for example. So 45 to identify, including weekends and holidays. You have 180 days cumulative of that to get it all closed. So when you think about this window here, 45 days and 180, when I talk to a lot of realtors, they'll usually tell you it's the 45 days is harder to find the property than 180. And the DST could be a good solution here. And we'll talk about this more as we go, because the DST, we bought the properties in advance. We close on them in advance. So we're not worried about the 45 days. And I'll explain that more as we go over the DST portion. Another rule too is you can't just exchange any property. The property that you're exchanging has to be held for investment or business use. Investment or business use. And the word like kind doesn't mean you have to go from apartments to apartments or storage to storage. What it means is you can go from any property held for investment or business use into any property held for investment or business use. That's a like kind exchange. So you can go from apartments into raw land into healthcare to self-storage. Heck, you can even exchange air rights above a building, water rights and mineral rights below a building. So there's something called a Delaware Statutory Trust, or the DST as we call it. The Delaware Statutory Trust is an internal revenue procedure that was created back in the year 2004-86 of the code. Inland has been the top sponsor of 1031 DSTs since 2004. And this is a vehicle, you can have one or more people going to one or more properties in a DST, and there's certain advantages, which we'll talk about here in a second. But exchanging into a DST is very easy. Step number 1, you sell your property. Contact your realtor. Inland doesn't sell it for you. Find a realtor to sell your property. Step number 2, funds have to go to a third-party qualified intermediary. And when you set up escrow, you just check the box that says it's an exchange. It needs to go to QI. This needs to be done in advance. Step number 3, with the help of a financial advisor, since this is a securitized program, the funds get wired into a Delaware statutory trust. So easy as 1, 2, 3. Sell your property, QI, funds go into the DST. So let's talk today about the benefits of a Delaware statutory trust. There's 6 main benefits I want to talk about. There's more than this, but based on the amount of time we have today, I just want to go over the 6 most salient bullet points. In green, first bullet point is in a DST, you would get access to institutional quality properties. It's the first thing. Think about today's market. You have volatility, interest rates moving, you got inflation, volatile stock markets, all these things happening. In these types of markets, everyone's looking for safety, a flight to safety, a flight to quality. And some DSTs can provide that. And let me explain further. Imagine a DST typically can have up to 500 investors into a Delaware statutory trust. The minimum investment in a Delaware statutory trust is $100,000. So when you imagine up to 500 people, imagine if we had my 100,000, we've got someone else's million, someone else's 10 million, times that by 500 investors. Now we're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars investable for new property. So maybe you're going from $1 million duplex in Los Angeles, if that exists anymore. You can go into some of these amazing properties shown here. For example, ESPN's corporate headquarters is an inland Delaware statutory trust. AT&T's corporate headquarters is an inland Delaware statutory trust. You can find FedEx facilities. You can find apartment buildings, student housing, healthcare, self-storage, to give you an idea that's out there in the market at any given time. So maybe you're going to go up in quality by selling what you own and going to one of these institutional grade properties. The second thing in green bullet point here is there's no management responsibilities, no management. So if you can imagine up to 500 people, can you imagine everyone having a management say? It would be chaos, right? So in this situation, the DST sponsor acts as the trustee of the trust, in a way, the property manager, right? So Inland handles the water heater that blows in the middle of the night, the tenants that's not paying rent, and it gets you out of what they call the terrible T's. What are those, you may ask? As you know, owning apartments, the tenants, the toilets, the trash, the termites, teenagers, taxes, TROs, all the terrible T's of ownership in real estate and managing it. In a DST, you're passive. It's a passive vehicle. You're just along for the ride. You get a monthly income, and you're not dealing with the tenants and the issues that come with them. So for example, at Inland personally, I have 3 different Delaware statutory trusts I bought into. Every first of the month, I get a direct deposit. It's triggered by the first of the month, so monthly income. Every quarter, you get an update. End of the year, you receive an informational 1099. And here's an example here on the screen. And 1099s, as you know, come on time. We know it's the K1s that force you to file extensions. The 1099s typically come out in January, February, March of each year. In this example, this person owns 2.7% beneficial interest in a DST. I'm highlighting here with my mouse cursor. They paid rents. They receive rents of $77,808 over 12 months, offset by interest expense and depreciation of $32,694. So instead of paying taxes on the $77,000, they're paying taxes on the $41,790. So it's there's a tax equivalent yield here. There's a depreciation you add back into these DSTs because, as you know, you have to report your rental income as ordinary income on Schedule E of your taxes. So for me, I go to my accountant with my 3 different 1099s for 3 different DSTs. Under Schedule E, there's property A, B, and C, plugs in my income, my depreciation, and we figure out everything there. So we have a whole floor of accountants in Inland that work on these numbers to help depreciate as much as possible. And our goal is to pass that along to you that you can offset your taxes and get more income. So if you're getting 3.5%, 4% on a typical Delaware statutory trust, cash on cash net of all fees, it's going to feel higher if you're in a higher tax bracket, maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, who knows, depends on your situation. So this is a great thing. No management, monthly income, easy tax reporting end of the year. Next thing is diversification. Again, back to the idea of volatile markets like we're in today. Uncertainty, the best way to mitigate risk is to diversify. Many people that sell a property only identify one property because they got the 45 days, right? Well, the Delaware Statutory Trust, we have some unique advantages. Back to this slide. You might have an ESPN headquarters or this type of high quality property. It might be one property in there. But hypothetically, let's just make this up for an educational example. Let's imagine hypothetically we had a DST that had 5 apartment buildings in Florida in one Delaware statutory trust portfolio. Or let's imagine we had 5 hospitals in Arizona in another hypothetical DST, or maybe 30 storage facilities in Texas, just making this up. So imagine you sold your $1 million duplex in Los Angeles, and you went to 3 different DSTs utilizing the 200% rule. You just went from one property in one city in one state. You went to 3 properties, 3 states, into 40 properties in 3 states and 3 asset classes. So you can see the immense diversification you get inside of a Delaware statutory trust. So again, it's a great way to spread out, mitigate risk, because if anything happens to any one property, it's not going to take down all your income or all of your principal as well, right? The next thing is this is limited personal liability. And simple exchange law states this: if you sell a property for $1 million, you need to go back into $1 million in real estate with the net sales proceeds. So if you sold $1 million, you go back into $1 million in real estate to defer all of your taxes. You can do a partial exchange. You can sell $1 million property and buy an $800,000 property, but that $200,000 did not exchange is considered boot or taxable. So to complete a fully deferred exchange, your net sales proceeds fully have to go into the purchased property, regardless of minus the net, the realtor fees and all that, right? So imagine this: if you had a property that's $1 million, and you had $500,000 in debt, $500,000 in equity, and you sold it, that loan got paid off. The $500,000 got paid back via escrow to the bank, right? Your $500,000 goes to the qualified intermediary, which goes into your next exchange. The problem is you have to get back to $1 million. So most people, you can come out of pocket the cash, but most people don't have that money laying around. So they end up taking out a new loan. So typical people in an exchange sell a 50% loan to value property, they have to go back into 50% loan to value on the buy side. If you sold it at 25% loan to value, you have to buy back into 25% loan to value on the buy side. So imagine this: everyone trying to get a loan in a DST with up to 500 people would be chaos, right? It would cost a fortune, would take forever. So in the Delaware Statutory Trust, sponsors of DSTs are allowed to take out one loan, one non-recourse loan to you. We put the loan as inland on the property. You can absorb our debt. Now, some of our DSTs have 0 debt. Some have 35, 40, 50, even 70% loan to value. And the thing is, you can choose the DST with the leverage you need to make it work for you. So let's say you have 25% loan to value what you're selling out of, but we don't have a 25% loan to value deal. You could put half your money into property number 1 into a 0 debt DST. Property number 2, put half your money into a 50% loan to value DST. Now you're averaging out to 25% loan to value. You can mix and match these numbers any way possible to get your loan to value. But imagine this: maybe you have no depreciation left, right? Cost basis is following you. What you could do is go from no debt into a 50% loan to value DST that's non-recourse to you to pick up more depreciation. It's going to give you a better tax equivalent yield. So there's a lot of ways to play with this. I want to show you a real example here. Hypothetical investor sells a $1.1 million building. They had $600,000 in equity, $500,000 in debt. They're at 45% loan to value. The replacement property is $600,000 in equity and $565,000 in debt. So what's happening is, on the number on the right, the replacement property is an inland DST that we put together that people are absorbing into. So in this situation, they went from 45% loan to value into our 48.5 without ever taking out a loan, and this is non-recourse debt. So as you can see here, they're picking up an extra $65,719 in leverage, which will give them more depreciation end of the day. This exchange would work. So in closing with this thought, you don't need a loan with a DST. You can absorb our debt as yours. It's non-recourse, but we pass all the depreciation of the leverage onto you in the form of a 1099 at the end of the year. So super simple. Second to last thing is estate planning. You can put a Delaware statutory trust inside of your revocable living trust. So if you want to pass into real estate without going through probate, you can put the DST inside of your revocable. Here's the benefit. Imagine you own an apartment building. It's not a DST, and you're handling the tenants and toilets and trash all through your retirement. Upon death, you have 2 kids that are going to fight over when to sell it, who to manage it, who to refinance it, and when. But imagine this: you sell an apartment building, put it into a DST, place that in a revocable living trust. You pass away, the kids split the income per the trust. There's no fighting. And at the end, the kids can go different directions if they choose. So this is a great way to estate plan and not get caught up in some of the pitfalls that are out there. And the last bullet point I want to share with you is just the concept of just the idea of insurance policy. So a lot of people that are selling one property will buy into one property. But think about this. If that one property falls out of escrow after day 45, it causes a huge situation where you can no longer exchange, right? So imagine there's property number 1 you're going into. You can put property number 2 and 3 with a financial advisor into a Delaware statutory trust. So if property number 1 falls apart, you have 2 more options to exchange into with the Delaware statutory trust. If you do this correctly, you can identify the Delaware statutory trust as a backup just in case you fall out of escrow. In closing, if you're looking for high quality properties in today's market, if you're looking to get out of the management responsibilities, to get some diversification, not have to get a loan, use this as an estate plan or insurance policy, the DST can be right for you. I want you to think about this, is in this type of market that we're in, again, it's hard to find a property in 45 days. Think about a Delaware statutory trust. Inland has already closed on the property in advance. We've done due diligence ourselves. We got a loan from a bank, right? We filed this with the SEC. They don't approve or deny anything. Just goes on record. This goes to the financial community. The financial advisor community, they have a broker dealer that they have to approve every deal. They go through a third party due diligence report. So it's different layers of due diligence that we go through. Then it goes to you where you can read the private placement memorandum. But I'm getting at, we've already bought it. Loan's already done. Due diligence has been done in advance as well. And this is sitting in a menu. Like you go to a restaurant, I want the steak, I want the chicken, I want the fish. You can talk to your financial advisor and you can look at the menu of options that are out there to look at Inland, whether it's Inland or another company. You can look at the different options that exist and choose what's right for you with help from your financial professional. So again, here's my little barcode with my information. There's some basic educational brochures here as well on Delaware statutory trusts. Reach out to me as you like, as you need. And I'd turn it back over to you all to open up for questions and answer.
Thank you for that. That was great. Great sharing. I just clicked on the link. Want to make sure that it works here for everybody. And I think it will. It's just kind of thinking. So while it's thinking, great. I see we have one question already. And so now is the perfect time to type in your questions. I know that was a lot of really good information. Charles, thank you for how you made it simple for people. If this is someone that's listening for the very first time, boom, there it is. I got it up on my phone.
Nice. There it is.
There it is. That QR code does work. So thank the tech team, right?
Exactly.
And so now's the perfect time to type in your questions and we'll get to those. And if you guys jumped on late, Inland Securities Corporation, they've been number 1 for just year after year on the volume, largest sponsors of DSTs in the country, and over 10 billion, which is just an insane number. And anyway, so, and then also, again, we have the thing coming up, a legislative update at noon. So definitely catch that one. And also just one other thing, if you're in the LA area, LA does have, AOA does have a brokerage and we'd love to help you, give you a free property valuation and maybe help you sell it and help facilitate one of these, get you into one of these DSTs as well. So that's your job, obviously, Charles, but at least help it happen. So, all right. So we have Kai on YouTube and he's asking, they're asking, do you facilitate tax deferred cash outs?
We do not. So in our Delaware statutory trust, we've done the loan in advance, but in a typical DST, you cannot just, cash out refinance. So you're typically in a DST for about 5 to 7 years. Has been the average. It could be longer. It could be shorter depending on the duration of a DST. I've seen deals go in 3 years, deals go in 10 years. 5 to 7 years is the average, but you cannot cash out refinance to use that for other projects.
Okay, great. And I thought that was really clever. The IRS.
It's the only comedy I can find for laughing about the IRS a little bit. You know, it's a little joke there, but I use it in a lot of seminars.
Yeah, that's a great one. I gotta get the graphic on that one. That's very cool. And what I think some people, one of the biggest questions that we get, and we get it all the time, it's, hey, I have a partnership. And so how do we work with a partnership? I got one, we're 50-50 involved. The other investor wants to continue to be active where I'm ready. I've hit my fourth quarter and I'm ready to really, become totally passive. So what would you say? What would you say to someone in that situation?
Yeah, we could do a whole seminar. We probably should in the future about entity issues, because depending on the entity you're in, changes the scenario a little bit, right? And this is something we can help consult with. And you feel free to contact me. We can help put you in touch with the right folks. In fact, I put my contact information in the chat box. I think you saw that. So anyone wants to catch me on that side. But here's how it works in general. Whatever the entity is, say it's ABC LLC, for example, okay?
Right.
Or partnership. The buying entity has to be ABC LLC or ABC partnership, right? So whatever the entity is selling has to be the entity that's buying. So in a lot of partnerships, it's a lot easier to separate, right? Where it gets a little more difficult is when you go into LLCs, where there's a multi-member LLC. So say there's 5 people in an LLC, 3 want to exchange and 2 don't. That's where you get a lot of the issues, right? And there's a lot of ways to handle this. There's certain people I always defer to in the industry when I have this situation. I'll bring people on conference calls to go over this, because you want to do it the right way. In any entity you try to dissolve, you need a bit of a runway, right? You dissolve an entity, you got to wait a couple of years in order to do the exchange. So what a lot of people do is a partnership is easy, right? You can go your separate ways. And when I say easy, we still have to go over the situation and the complexities of it. But usually the LLC is where, if you do part ways, you probably have to do your exchange and figure out a way to buy each other out, on the back end of it, right? So there are ways to do it. It just gets more complicated with an LLC, but most other entities are pretty straightforward.
Great. Okay, Chuck Brewer, please review the moving of depreciation from property to multiple properties for tax purposes.
You got it. So this is kind of a thing. Again, I'm not an accountant, talk to your accountant, but usually when you sell a property, you have so much depreciation, right? Maybe you've burned off 15 years of a 30-year schedule or whatever it is that you're on. So it's not like you're starting over in a DST. For example, you're kind of starting where you're at in that 15-year mark, and we might have some depreciation in our deal as well. So a lot of people that want more depreciation will take on more leverage in a DST. A lot of times people just leverage up because it's non-recourse debt. It's not really theirs. It's an opportunity for them to really enhance their distribution, if you will, through a tax equivalent yield. So that question, when we have multiple properties, the complexity of the depreciation is, in our 1099, we'll give you a breakdown of each property and the depreciation for each property. We break apart the land, the building, the structure. We give you everything in that 1099. That was the front page of it. But as it goes on, we'll break down every property for you and give you the numbers you need to figure out depreciation on each property into multiple property situation.
Great. All right. Well, I don't see if you have another question, now is the time to put it in there. Any other thoughts that you would like to share with us, Charles, here?
Yeah, I sure would. I know a lot of times when people are picking like a stock, for example, a typical investor will look to the income or distribution as the health of that stock. In a Delaware statutory trust, the average for most DSTs is around 4% cash on cash, net of all fees. Just be aware of some of the higher yielding DSTs. Ask yourself, if we're all buying the same properties, how does someone get a little extra yield? With more yield is more risk. So keep that in mind when we look at a DST and pay attention to it. Make sure that when you go through the prospectus, that it's the funds are coming from the property and not from principal bring returns. So be very careful of that. Just pay attention. And when you see a yield, just ask yourself, how did we get this higher yield? So there's a reason for everything.
Right. And let's say somebody is going to put their building on the market. Do they need to talk to you before they do that?
It's always nice. Heck, we get people to call us in the 45th day to dedicate. We can make it work, right? Because our properties are already closed in advance. got to talk to the QI and all that. But preferably, it's good to talk to us before you go to list your property. And again, a financial advisor has to be in this process as well, because it's security. So it's good to get speaking in advance, because that way we can plan. So typical DST works like this: is we're talking probably before 30 days before close of escrow, and you've already done a reservation into a DST you've selected in advance, so we can hold a piece of equity under certain rules. And when you go to close in the morning, the funds go to the qualified intermediary. The afternoon, they get wired to the DST, so you're not losing 1 day of income because you get prorated on the income.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I thought the timeline that might help people. And you talking about what the cash flow is, I think that's also good, and giving that little warning. Okay, we've got Chuck again. Thanks, Chuck, for asking questions. Okay, we have a client that owns a 40-unit apartment building with 14 shareholders. How do we handle S Corp and owners are going in different directions after the sale? So they need a real estate attorney, probably.
Yeah. I'd say, Chuck, give me a ring. My number's in the chat information there. I can bring in with my team that can help with you with that situation, because we're going to ask a couple more questions, but we can definitely help you and point you in the right direction. So that's something we can help you with. Just give me a call anytime today, tomorrow. Send me an email, and we're happy to walk you through that. I just want to make sure we give you a specific answer to your situation.
Great. Yeah, and that's not the first time you've seen that. You've probably seen it at least, 1,000 times?
Yeah, 1,000 times, yeah.
I was going to say 100, but for the volume that you guys do, probably more than that. Okay, here's Echelon. Can you educate me on the difference between a REIT and a DST?
Yeah, sure.
Question. Yeah.
That's a good question. So we do REITs as well, right? REITs came out in an act of Congress in the 1960s. I think it was the Eisenhower administration. And they wanted to give the average investor the ability to invest in institutional grade real estate. Back in the day, it was only the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, all these rich families that got richer. And so the average person didn't have access to that high quality property. So what REITs did was give everyone access. But here's the thing. You cannot exchange into a REIT technically, because a REIT is stock. The DST itself is the vehicle. It's much like a REIT. It's like a closed-end fund. So if we have hypothetically 5 apartment buildings in Florida in a DST, those properties have been purchased. There's no more no more properties to be added. In a REIT, you have a blind pool. You're going to buy $1 billion in real estate, and they can be style driven. They're not bad. It's just that it's a blind pool. But the vehicle for exchanges is the DST. And the advantages of that is usually it's some of the top properties that go in the DSTs. And in addition to that, you know what you're buying. You're not buying any more shares or anything else. You know exactly what you're getting. And again, it grows tax deferred. There's something called an UPREIT. That's for another presentation. Umbrella partnership REIT, which you could go into something like that. Those are becoming more and more popular. But the problem is your exchange journey ends. You do get some liquidity on the backside. That's a whole other conversation. So, but typically you cannot just exchange into a REIT. So we have them separated. You have investments for IRA, for a cash account, whatever, REITs. You have investment for it's exchangeable into Delaware statutory trust. That being said, the minimum is $100,000 for a forward exchange. If you want to just do a cash investment into DST, it's $25,000. So you could write a check, have it grow tax deferred after tax dollars. So you could do that, but typically people go into REITs with those types of funds.
Great. And for you had mentioned that you have 3 different DSTs. Do you have any REITs that you've invested in?
I've done some of our REITs in the past, but a lot of times I personally do a lot of cash in a DST type investments. Yeah. I like those. So
right. A little more, you kind of know what you're getting.
Well, it's right. It's the closest thing to buying a rental property without the management, right? Yeah. And the money grows tax deferred, and that's exchangeable on the next journey. So it's fun. Plus, you know what you own, and it's my preference. But REITs, I've done some REITs in the past as well.
Yeah. They can be great. Right now, with property prices going down, I think that's a question that people, that also will probably be a question that people have. With prices coming down, how's that going to impact someone that's selling today and getting into a DST?
Yeah, so if you look at most DST sponsors don't buy in California. We buy in other states because there's better cap rates, right? Let's face it here, with the interest rates where they're at now in California properties, they haven't fully come down yet, right? I live by the beach here. It hasn't moved much at all. It's starting to come down a little bit. But the thing is you're taking off the top of the market in one state, going to another market. But a lot of times if we're going to higher quality, we're going to mitigate the risk, right? and diversification as well. Because let's face it, you are selling at a top, you're buying at a top, but we're trying to buy, discounted properties as much as we can because we buy all in cash at the DST, add leverage later. In fact, the 4 founders of Inland a lot of times front the money themselves, so we don't have a bridge loan that's weighing on us. So I'm getting at it is that we'll find some diamonds out there, if you will, across the United States, get you a better income. But let's face it, we are selling a top, buying a top, so we have to buy very carefully.
Right. All right. Well, so people can try and find the dynamo on their own and stay active and stay in it like they've been doing for years, or if they're in that time in their life where, man, I'm a little tired, then or whatever, then they can do a DST and kind of get out of it and enjoy it a little more, maybe.
And that's the benefit, right? For example, I'm 46 and I have 3 different DSTs. But imagine the baby boomers. 1 out of 4 Americans by 2030 will be a boomer, right? And retiring. And don't they want to retire from the real estate too? And so the DST is great because it keeps your exchangeability intact, giving you diversification, some safety, some quality, and sometimes a higher income out of the state of California. So it's a neat thing to look at.
Great. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time, and everybody, thank you for the good questions that you asked. And of course, this is on YouTube. You go to the AOA USA, just type in AOA USA in YouTube, and our channel will pop up, and you'll see other videos. There's a live tab that covers the live ones like this, and then there's a videos tab. There's just kind of surf around in there on our channel, and you'll see lots of different stuff. And we do have things broken down by area as well, and whether it's San Diego Bay Area, whatever it might be. Okay, here's the last question. So we'll wrap it up after this one. So minimum investment across the board for a DST is $100K. Can someone who doesn't own property jump into a DST? Also, what about the difference between a DST versus... Okay, I'll wait on that question. We'll just do the first question first.
The first question is really easy. So again, you can do a cash investment into a DST. So you can just write a check. It can't be through an IRA or a qualified account. It has to be a non-qualified taxable account. You can write a check for $25,000, as small as $25,000, and go into a DST. And think about this: stock market volatility up and down. A DST, you have hard assets. You have real estate, an inflation hedge. A lot of these are apartment storage facilities that reset rents quite a bit. So it's a great thing to go into to stabilize your portfolio. They have always said the 3 legs of the stool on a stool you sit on is like cash, stocks, bonds. Real estate's that 4th asset class, as we all know. So it's a great way to invest into it without the headaches as a cash investment.
And so do you need to be a qualified investor? Is that right, to be able to do that?
Really good question. Accredited investor. What that means is to go into a DST, you have to have $1 million net worth minus the value of your personal residence. So if you have 2 rental properties that are $500,000 each, you're accredited. A lot of people in California real estate rich and cash poor. But let's say you have your $500,000 rental property, but you have a $500,000 401k, stocks, bonds, cash, mutual funds, add it all up, you're accredited. So $1 million net worth, or you make $200,000 a year, you're single for the last 2 years, expectation of this year making that same amount of money, or you're married making $300,000 joint the last 2 years, expectation this year the same, makes you accredited. I would say, talk to us. We'll get you in front of a financial advisor that will help you go through this and find out if you're accredited, because you might be surprised.
All right, here's the second question that they had, and this will be it. Also, what about the difference between a DST versus going the DSCR route?
DSCR?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah. But just do the DST.
There we go.
I'm teasing. I'm just not sure what the other one is, the second one that you mentioned. Right. My apologies there.
Right, me neither. And I'm sure if they shared it, we'd be like, oh, that's what it is. But
sure.
Anyway, but thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it, Charles. And your number, everything is up there. And go ahead and share that QR code, your slide with the QR code again, so people can just get it in their phone. On the front end, I wasn't a fast enough draw with the phone to get it out there and scan it fast enough, but now I did. So here you got a little time here, and so
you might have to move your video around a little bit, to get it. But I'm gonna try it out too.
Yeah. So there it is, and I'm giving you a second to grab that. And anyway, again, we're going to be back on at 12 noon.